Previously on Headin South.
It's one thing about tarpon fishing. You can be in the middle of them, thick as thieves, and they just won't bite. They bite when they want to. Okay, hold on. Here we go.
You heard of the gold rush? This is the silver rush.
Usually when people think of fishing on the Mississippi Gulf Coast, they think of traveling to one of Mississippi's beautiful barrier islands and fishing with light tackle to catch speckled trout or maybe even a redfish. And really that's for good reason, because the fishing for specks and reds in these waters is some of the best you can get. But the great fishing doesn't just end there. On some of the structures surrounding these islands you can find sheephead, triple-tail, cobia, and even every now and then a pompano. But another fish around these islands that people rarely think of may be the most prized fish of them all. Tarpon. And I think the main reason nobody thinks of tarpon is because they're so hard to catch. But my good buddies Captain Jeremy McHugh and Captain Mark McDonald have figured out a process for themselves that makes this fishing a little easier.
You ready for it? He might jump right now. There he goes.
And while these two may have figured out a routine that makes going with them and catching them a lot easier, I don't think the excitement when they catch one has diminished one bit.
That's what it's all about, baby.
These two have spent a decade trying to pattern these fish and figuring out the keys to being successful catching them.
Okay, hold on. Here we go.
The Headin South crew got on board with these two, and it didn't take us long to figure out just how well their techniques were working. As Jeremy and Mark had hooked up with a fish, got him boat side, and released him, all within the first hour that we were on the boat. But when it came time to put my first Silver King on the boat, the sharks had moved in. And, well, I missed out on day one. But that all changes today. On our first day of fishing with Jeremy and Mark, we had a very good day. We caught a really nice tarpon within our first hour of fishing with these guys. But if I would have known what day two had in store, I would have gotten to the dock even earlier than we already did. Because just after a short ride to where we caught that tarpon on day one, and about 10 minutes of fishing,
Game time, boys.
we're on again. And this is a very, very big fish. But can we get this Silver King boat side? We'll find that out later on in the show.
We first began studying the early life stages of tarpon that we were finding up in the estuary.
Plus, we sit down with marine scientists Jim Franks and Patrick Graham from the Gulf Coast Research Lab to figure out why these tarpon are making such a remarkable comeback on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. Stay tuned.
Pick it up and aim it at him. Oh, he threw it. Did he throw it? Nope. All right. We're good.
Welcome back to Headin South. On day 2 of the rise of the Silver Kings, we were hooked up pretty much right off the bat. And on the rod on this one was Chris Lapnevsky from the Gulf Coast Research Lab. Because for Jeremy and Mark, it's much more than a passion for catching these fish and a passion for putting their clients on these fish. These two are also a huge part of collecting scientific data on these tarpon. After all these years of trial and error and figuring out, do you finally feel comfortable that you've got this down pat?
Absolutely. Last year was a breakthrough year. Me and Mark and the research lab boated 11 of them. 11 tarpon and put 4 satellite tags in them last year. I knew then when we could take the research team out and tag a tarpon and be able to handle that process, that's extremely hard, and we're still learning every day, that we had an amazing fishery here.
But in order to tag and get data on this fish we've got hooked up right now, Chris has got to put this fish boat side, which is a much more monumental task than you would think.
He's a fighter, this one. Coming up. Watch. Oh yeah, beautiful. Come on, I gotta get to one side, buddy. It's not my shot. It's not my shot. He's got a lot of life. Touch the leader though.
Hey, tell me that's a caught fish cap?
I like to get him boat side. But... oh yeah, now he's coming out. Now if you get on his head, I can get him. Try to crank him up. Come on, baby.
Get down on him.
Perfect shot. Perfect shot. There you go, buddy. Get the girth.
Gosh. I'm good.
I don't know how that could have went any smoother. He's almost there, guys. That's good. That's good.
He's gone.
He's gone.
What you think about that, Mr. Chris?
I think he's gonna be all right.
Good job, guys.
All right, guys.
But this offshore research is only part of the study behind this incredible fish. When we come back, we're going to talk a little more to Jim and Patrick about some of the amazing and even surprising things they've come up with. And also coming up, you got it, I get my shot at a Silver King. Stay tuned.
Oh yeah, now he's coming out. Now if you get on his head, I can get him.
Once Chris was able to get this fish boat side, he was also able to gather some very important information on this big tarpon. But the research actually starts when these tarpon are a whole lot smaller than this one.
Well, you know, our work on tarpon here on the Mississippi Gulf Coast goes back many years. We first began studying the early life stages of tarpon that we were finding up in the estuary. This is a classic area for juvenile tarpon in coastal Mississippi. It's sort of a backwater tidal pool associated with a tidal slough that's associated with the Mississippi Sound. So we collected larval tarpon along the beach fronts, and then we think that they swim up into the tidal sloughs and get back into these shallow ditch lines and tidal sloughs along the coast, and this is where they thrive and grow. Of course, this ties in very nicely later on with the work that we're doing with the adult tarpon offshore, where we're attaching satellite trackers.
We first started with identifying that these young fish that we're seeing in the estuaries were in fact tarpon. So our next goal was to kind of identify areas that these young fish are using as nursery grounds, which we were able to do. We were able to identify nursery grounds from as far east as Grand Bay, Mississippi, to as far west as Waveland. Yeah, so what we're looking at is a sagittal otolith of one of our collected tarpon leptocephali. Just like adult fish, the otoliths, or the ear stones of larval fish, can be used to estimate an age of that fish. We can count up these rings. So that total ring count that we get corresponds to how many days that fish has been alive, drifting from the site of spawning to our inshore nurseries where we collected this larvae.
Did some of these fish we're hooked up with today start as juveniles in these Gulf Coast estuaries? Well, I don't know, but I'm ready to do my part in this research.
Oh, nice fish, Keaton.
Up next, I get my first shot on one of these big silver kings. Stay tuned.
Boy, that was awesome.
If you want a tarpon trip of a lifetime, contact Captain Jeremy McHugh of Stillwater Charters or Captain Mark McDonald of Ambush Fishing Charters. You won't regret it. Tarpon fishing off the Mississippi Gulf Coast, as good as it gets.
Oh, nice fish, Keaton. Nice little fish.
The work that we're doing with the adult tarpon offshore, where we're attaching satellite trackers to those fish that we catch in collaboration with Captain Jeremy McHugh and Mark McDonald, they're very helpful to us in helping us understand the movements and migratory patterns of these adult fish that occur in our waters in the summertime. And those two fellows have been very helpful to us over the last couple of years in helping us attach satellite trackers to adult tarpon here in our coastal waters.
While these guys help out a lot in the research of these beautiful tarpon, they also put a lot of people on this bucket list fish, like my buddy Kyle Williams. The first time he stepped on a boat with Mark, within minutes he was hooked up on his first tarpon.
I have a passion to put a tarpon boat side every day. With our fishery that we have and our determination, I really think it's an attainable goal to have at least one fish caught or jumped per day. And that's an amazing thing anywhere on the world.
Yeah, Jeremy's right. With the success we've had here this year, the sky's the limit. And our goal is to put one boat side every day, and we're making that happen, and you don't have to go anywhere else to do it. We're seeing the same amount of fish as any other destination, where our success rate is very good and getting better.
Yeah, we're on! Come here!
Tarpon fishing along the Mississippi Gulf Coast can only be described as, well, world class. And I think I gotta agree with Mark. It's only getting better. Because now, I'm hooked up with the Silver King I've been waiting on.
About to jump. Beautiful. Not really done, it's kind of quick, but I'm gonna jump again. Got him? Oh yeah.
Well, wouldn't you know it, I've gone and picked a fight with a big Silver King. The one I've been waiting to wrangle since my buddies Jeremy and Mark told me we had a great tarpon fishery in the state of Mississippi.
He might jump right now. There he goes.
And while they're having great success right now, it seems like it's only been going on for the last few years. But there was a time earlier in this century where a fish like this was pretty common on the Mississippi coast. Jim, we all know and have heard stories about how good tarpon fishing used to be. Tell us what all you know about that.
Well, according to the historical records, and we've looked into this in quite detail, tarpon fishing along the Mississippi coast was just phenomenal back in the late 1800s and up to 1950 or so. Every summer fish were all over the Mississippi Sound, even up in Biloxi Bay. So there was a huge tarpon fishery here for several decades. Then sometime around the mid-50s, everything began to decline, not only here but Gulf-wide. And it was believed due to maybe loss of habitat all around the Gulf, that nursery habitat where the little guys grow up. In some cases, probably in South Florida, there were a lot of heavy fishing, pressure on the fish. I think all of that probably led to a diminished number of tarpon in the Gulf, all around the Gulf.
Oh, nice fish! Nice little fish!
Well, these fish have seemed to make a comeback. And now, I'm hooked up with one of these comeback Silver Kings.
Not really done, it's not quick, but I'm gonna jump again.
Now, I just got to get this fish boat side. And that turned out to be a little bit tougher than I thought.
Oh, watch him, watch him. Good job, good job, buddy. Good job. There he goes, there he goes. Boy, that was awesome.
Do I get my first Silver King boat side? Stay tuned to Headin South and find out.
Here he goes. Here he goes. Boy, that was awesome.
Welcome back to Headin South. I'm hooked up on my very first tarpon. And in the name of science, and for my own personal pride, and most importantly to keep Captain Jeremy and Captain Mark from ripping me a new one for losing this fish, I need to get this fish boat side.
He's mean. He ain't happy. No, he is not. One more. He goes. He's alright. He's still really trying to take a step back. Perfect. He might get you.
We got him, baby. Hey, Stillwater Fishing Charters getting it done.
Number 2.
Oh, number 3.
Yeah.
2 for today.
Well, I can go ahead and knock that one off my bucket list. My first tarpon. But hopefully not my last, because I'm hooked. Get it? But I'm ready to go again. And thanks to Captain Mark and Captain Jeremy for putting us on these prize Silver Kings again. And a special thanks to Jim Franks and Patrick Graham from the Gulf Coast Research Lab for being on today's show. I hope you've learned something, because I know that I surely have. And Headin South will be working closely with all these guys in the future as their tarpon research continues. And thanks to all of you for watching Headin South.
If you want a tarpon trip of a lifetime, contact Captain Jeremy McHugh of Stillwater Charters or Captain Mark McDonald of Ambush Fishing Charters. You won't regret it. Tarpon fishing off the Mississippi Gulf Coast, as good as it gets.